Welcome to the Unique Woman's Podcast with Monica Wesson. We are a faith-based network where our mission is to equip women for everyday living. To connect further or subscribe, visit us at uniqueiam.org.
Well, great morning, ladies. I trust that all of you are off to a great morning, a great week ahead. And I certainly pray that all of you will have a productive week as well. I am here on this morning to share this week's podcast with all of you unique ladies. And what I want to chat with you all about on today is being women driven by God's purpose. For some of you that are connected to our women's group community, and beyond, we actually had been discussing the last 2 weeks purpose and destiny. And so on today, I just want to give to you all what I feel that would be necessary. Maybe perhaps for some of you, it is a reminder, or it was a reminder as we conducted our equipping sessions the last 2 weeks, or perhaps for some of you, it was something new that you've heard, or maybe you just didn't have the chance or the opportunity to listen in to the equipping sessions. Whatever the case may be, I on today want to talk about through today's podcast what it means to be a woman driven by God's purpose. And what does that actually mean? It means specifically to embrace God's plan for you. The creator of human life, God is. He is the creator of human life and the only legitimate source of human purpose. He is the only one, right? And so any pursuit, ladies, motivated by our own interests constitutes abandoning our life's true purpose. Understand, for an example, that there may be differences between a woman who is into business, or she is the entrepreneur or the owner of that business, and then there is the woman who is working for this specific lady, and she is the administrative assistant or the receptionist in the office. I want you to know on today that as long as each is motivated by her own goals, each lacks purpose. And some of you may say, well, why is that? Because women, understand today that when we as women, or while we as women are being successful and fulfilling our life's purpose, they are not all the same issue, okay? We could reach all of our personal goals, become a raving success by the world's standard, and still miss the purpose for which God created us. I feel like I want to say that to us again on today. We can be women that are successful, that are being successful, fulfilling our life's purpose, but understand that they are not all the same issue. We could reach all of our personal goals, become a raving success by the world's standards, by what people see us as, right? And still miss the purposes for which God created us. The first thing I want you all to note here, if you're driving in the car and you're listening in, perhaps you will come back to this and write down what I am sharing with you on today. Or maybe you're drinking your coffee and you're drinking some tea, maybe, to get the kids ready, whatever it is that you're doing on this morning. I want you all to know this, is that everything that we do, it must and understand that it starts with God. God is the beginning and the ending of our life. He is the source of it all. To summarize that, it starts with us having a one-on-one relationship with him. I was reading this verse, ladies, found in Ephesians 1:11, and it says, in him also we have obtained an inheritance, or we were made we were made his inheritance, being predestinated according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will. The next thing I want us to note here, yeah, I want us to note this on today, because I paused for a second there, because that verse, it speaks volumes to each and every one of us on today. Understand that God was thinking of you and I before we were even a thought into our parents' mind. And I'm sure we've all heard that saying before. Or in other words, we were a part of his purpose. We were not an afterthought. We were on his mind, right? God has a plan for each and every one of us. And I'm also thinking of the prophet Jeremiah. He knows this all too well, found in Jeremiah 1:5. And it says this: before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. And before you came forth out of the womb, I sanctified you, or I set you apart, and I ordained you a prophet unto the nations. Now, all of us may not be called to be a prophet, but we have truly, all of us have a higher calling. We have something that we've been called to, right? But you can take this particular verse and still apply it to your life. You were already set apart for something so much more than what your eyes can actually comprehend, right? So again, we were not an afterthought in God's eyes. God knew exactly what he was doing when he created us. I want you to write this down if you're able to, that when we heed to our inner calling or purpose, both you and I, along with the people around us, will benefit. Did you catch that on this morning? When we heed to our inner calling, or purpose, both you and the people around you are going to benefit. Our lives are, or will be even more, our focus will be more grounded. We will also have or become positive, or a positive source to others and leader to people that would want to follow us, right? In other words, we won't be all over the place because we are staying in the lane, we're staying in the vein in which we were actually called to. Can I just pause right here? It is so easy for us sometimes as women to move into other lanes that actually do not belong to us, or we were never called to, or it was never predestined for our lives. So we must understand on this week, as we're going about our day, that our focus will be more grounded when we are heeding to our call, right? And that people will actually want to follow us and want to be to know more about what it is that we've been called to, because our life is more grounded. All right. And then the other thing is that if we want to be a woman who is driven by God's purpose and really want to move forward in life, along with we must connect our personal story to a larger picture. All of us on today have a story, that sometimes we try to shrink back from, right? We try to not, want to talk about it. And don't get me wrong, that was your story, at that time. But that same story is going to help. It's going to help catapult you into a place that you've probably never dreamed of, right? So we all have a story, and we must understand that our personal story is connected to a larger picture. The other thing, ladies, on today, I wanted to say is that when we as women live a life on purpose, it will force us to step out of our own small space. Yes, it will force us, because understand that there is a place that has been enlarged for us, something that is greater than where we are right now. Okay. And so, our gift, once we understand what our true purpose and what we've been called to, and what we've been predestined to, it's going to also take us, as we are a force, to make sure that we live our life on purpose. And it forces us to understand, to step out of our own small space, but also it will cause us to develop our gifting, our what we've been called to through practice, right? Yes, God equips us, but He wants us to add more on. He wants to add more on to that. Okay, He does not want us to stay at that same place. But when we are women that are driven by God's purpose, we understand that we are lifelong learners. None of us have arrived. We all have something else that we can possibly learn. Okay, we can possibly learn. So this is something that I wanted to share with us all on today, and understand that we have a higher purpose than where we are right now. God is calling us to something so much greater than where we are right now. I want you all to understand also, I heard this, I was watching this movie on last week, and this line, I want you ladies to write this down, because as you are moving and understanding, even on this week, this is probably a refresher for some of you, but hear this on today, that I want you to focus. And when you focus, you have to make sure that you get it into your mind that I am going to ignore the crowd, and I choose to stay in the game. Did y'all hear what I said on today? Choose to ignore the crowd, the naysayers, right? Of those that try to tell you that you're not able to do it, or even those voices that try to come into your mind, the fear and just doubt and just intimidation and all of that other stuff that we fight with on a daily basis. Because sometimes it's not people. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, right? So remember, I choose, say this with me on today, I choose to ignore the crowd and to stay in the game. Why? Because I am a woman that is driven by God's purpose. We all talk about purpose, right? We see it on the television. We see it we hear it through, media and all of this. People talk a lot about purpose, but as kingdom women, there is a totally different thing when we talk about purpose. Why is that? Because we have our purpose and God has His purpose for our lives. Okay. And so, and it's for all of us. Maybe you're not in the faith as of yet, right? But we all have a purpose that we have been created for. And so always remember that. And so I sense on this morning that deep down inside each of us, women listening under my voice, that there is an exceptional purpose for our lives, important work that we are meant to do, human or divine connections, more connections that we are meant to make. Do not be afraid to enlarge your territory, right? Don't be afraid. In fact, many have, have taken just a few moments at the beginning or the top of 2021, and then to make resolutions or to write down goals and plans. But I want you on today to begin to say, listen, I have written this down, but at the end of the day, it is God who will fulfill His purposes for my life, His purposes. And so we may fight against it, right? I remember that when I first got out of high school, I started nursing school. Then I went here and then I went there because I fought against the purpose of God for my entire life. So I encourage you on this morning to be an intentional, purpose-driven woman, to be an intentional God, a purpose-driven woman. Finding your life's purpose can and take some trial and error. Don't be too hard on yourselves. Yes, we have all been there. For my younger ladies on today, I want you to know that yes, you will go through some trial and error, but sometimes life sometimes presents us, during that process with challenges, right? With barriers, okay? But to the point of our God-given purpose, that we stop sometimes asking ourselves, how in the world can God use me with the past, with my environment that I've come from, right? Because when we go through that process of life, when we go through those trials and those errors and those mistakes that we have all made, and I don't care who tries to say on the outside, oh, I've never done that. Yeah, you probably have never done that, but you've done some things, right? So this is for my ladies on today that understand, and you're asking yourself, you are of age now, and you're saying to yourself, how can God use me? Perhaps you're still asking yourself that even on this morning as you're getting yourself dressed. I want you to know that if you want to be an effective woman who is driven, by God's purpose, and you feel like you are lacking training and skills, or perhaps you may seem that others are more talented and more equipped, I want you to ask yourself this question on today. This is something that I've spoken about, and I go back to this often. Every now and then I go back to it. Can I ask you, what is in your hand? And some of you may be listening and saying, oh my gosh, Monica, I've heard you talk about this a number of times. Well, I'm talking about it again right now. I want to ask you, what is in your hand? This is one of my favorite passages of scriptures, and it's found in Exodus 4:2, because Moses here, he doubted his ability to lead the Israelites from captivity. And so, and so God asked him, he says, what is in your hand? And so Moses replied, a staff. And so God says to him, use it. Okay. I'm telling you ladies on today, whatever it is that is in your hand, you've got to be willing to use it. Do not be afraid. What is in your hand? Is it another book that you need to write? Is it your first book that you need to write? Is it the opening of your daycare center? It is, we all have a higher purpose, something that we need to heed to, and that is only going to come through what God has predestined for our lives. What is in your hand? Use it to build God's kingdom. What God is using us, because here's the thing, everyone is not going to hold the microphone in their hand. Everyone is not called. Some people are called to the marketplace. Some people are called to other places outside of the four walls of a building. Here's the thing, ladies, whatever it is that you've been called to, remember on today, be reminded, whatever it is that I am called to, whatever it is that has been invested into my hands, I'm going to use it to benefit the kingdom of God. Your language may not be that of others, or whatever the case may be, but always remember, be reminded on today that I'm going to use it for the kingdom of God. Be a risk taker, ladies. Be a risk taker. Do not be afraid to move into something greater. Here's the thing. Social media is not your only outlet. God has other places. While it may be a form, while it may be a good place to start for some of you, but can I tell you that there is the picture is so much bigger than what you actually see, what you're actually scrolling through, right? Sometimes we waste so much time scrolling, and that is another way how we can get off focus and how we can try to move into something else, into someone else's purpose, because we start to focus, we start to compare, we start to become competitive. And here's the thing, ladies, as unique women, we are authentic. We We do not focus on other people's lane or other purposes that they've been called to. Why? Because we've been called to something greater. We have been created by God to be unique, to be authentic. And you may say, well, they're doing that, but you are not doing it. Here's the thing. Yes, we may have similar things that God is calling us to do, but no one can do it like you can, because you've been called to this particular sphere of influence, to these particular group of people. Your voice is attached to a group of people, and then there's others that have been attached to another group of people, right? Whatever lane that you've been called to, can I tell you on today, I want you to move and to stay in that lane. Be a risk taker. Esther, I'm even reminded, she was only a teenager when God gave her the task of saving the Jews. Esther knew that she fell, or she would fail, unless God showed up. If you go back to read the book of Esther, nowhere in that book where was God's name ever mentioned. But here's the key, ladies. But God was working behind the scenes the whole time. This is for some of you that have been called to the marketplace. You're not going to go in and start preaching and start telling them Jesus is this and God is this. Listen, as you open up your mouth, as you begin to work the assignment that has been invested into your hands, know this on today, that God is working behind the scenes through you to accomplish his greater purposes in and through you. So Esther understood that she would fail if God did not show up. Sometimes God's purpose require us to take a risk. As we are ending today's podcast, I want you ladies to know and to reflect on this, that inside each and every one of us lies dormant our visions, missions, and untapped potential. It is a life waiting to be unleashed. What are you saying, Monica? I've already unleashed, but can I tell you, for about 10 of you on today, that there is another unleashing that is coming to you in the month of February into the months of April. I want you to know that there is a life waiting to be unleashed. What you love is the clue, or is a clue to the gifts you contain to complete your assignment. Philippians 1:6 states, there has never been the slightest doubt in our minds that the God who started this great work in you would keep at it and bring it to a flourishing finish on the very day the Creator appears. Philippians 1:6. See, our vision and mission are already birthing in us because they are the assignments God created for us. You can begin creating, right? Do not allow that dream, if you've allowed the dream and the purpose to die and to lie dormant, today, this is the day that it will begin to catch fire again. You can begin creating and birthing them if you are willing. Here, if you are willing to conceive, believe, envision, position, endure, enlarge, prepare, labor. And when I say labor, I'm talking about there is a process, but you've got to be willing to labor through it and realize. Can I just say that one more time? You have to begin. You can begin creating and birthing them if you are willing, ladies, unique ladies, authentic ladies. If you're willing to conceive, believe, envision, position, endure, enlarge, prepare, labor, and realize. I am closing our broadcast today with another favorite verse of mine found in Jeremiah 29:11. He says, I know what I'm doing. I have it all planned out to take care of you, not to abandon you, plans to give you the future you hope for. We can start out by not loving what our God given purpose is. But I guarantee you, when it is all said and done, you will begin to line up. If you will make the choice, you will line up to the purpose or with the purpose that God has created for you. Be determined on today, ladies, that you are and that you will be a woman who is driven by, you are a woman rather, driven by God's purposes. I pray each of you have a wonderful week and that you understand that this will be a week of right choices, of this will be a week of being productive and not allowing anything to get in your way. Why? Because you are a woman driven by God's purposes. Have a great day. Have a great week. Smile because God loves you and I love you. Have a great one, ladies.